What's up everyone, my name is Jonathan, welcome to the Mid School Sessions. You are watching episode 3 of my 1991 Haro Sport restoration project. In today's episode, we're going to be focusing on the components. I'm going to be servicing and restoring all the parts ready for the reassembly. As part of that, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the tips and techniques I use when refinishing and bringing these parts back to life. Another thing we're going to look at are the upgrades. I'm going to be talking through which products I'm swapping out, why I'm swapping them out, and how I've identified the era-correct replacements. Some of you might remember in episode 2, I mentioned the handlebars and how they weren't the correct model year for a 1991. Since then, a few of you reached out on Instagram and asked how to tell the difference between the various Kneesaver bars. So with that in mind, I thought we'd kick off today by looking at handlebars. I'm going to run through the variations in Kneesaver handlebars and give you a guide as to which Kneesaver bars you might have. All Kneesaver bars look similar. However, if you know what to look out for, there are some differences across the various model years. I've got 3 sets of Kneesavers here, ranging from 1989 to 1999, and we're going to focus on what those differences are. The first thing we're going to look at are the end caps. This is one of the easiest ways to tell if you have an early or late set of Kneesaver handlebars. Early Kneesavers had curved end caps, while the later ones had flat caps. The logos used also changed over time, with early bars having an equal size chevron logo and later bars having an angular logo, often referred to as a Hevron logo. In some forums you hear people refer to the Hevron bars as fakes or imitation Kneesavers. However, if you look at the 1999 catalogue, you can clearly see the Hevron logo on the late model Kneesaver bars. The width of the bars also changed over time, with early bars having a 28-inch width, while the later ones were only 27 inches wide. This difference in width can also be seen in the crossbars, and it's worth noting that early models had a knurled crossbar, while later ones did not. Finally, the sweep of the bars also changed over time, with early bars having much more sweep than the later models. So from those 3 sets of bars, we know there's a nice set of 91s that I can use on this project. One thing I like to do though, whenever I get a set of used bars, is to check if they're straight. This is especially important if you plan to refinish or paint a set of bars. You don't want to go to that time and effort only to find out once they're already on the bike that they're bent. So to prevent any issues with your build further down the line, I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to check if your handlebars are bent. All you're going to need is a straight edge and a ruler, and you can measure with a pretty good degree of accuracy if the bars are straight or not. First up, we're going to measure the rise, and this is going to make sure that one side of the handlebars is not bent further up or down than the other. So to do this, you're going to get your handlebars squared up against the straight edge, and then measure from that straight edge up to where the handlebar touches the table. For this step, it's really important that everything is squared up straight, otherwise you're going to get inaccurate measurements. So after measuring the first side and taking a note of that measurement, we're going to repeat the process on the opposite end. Obviously the goal here is to get the same measurement on both sides, and that's why it's really important to make sure that things are properly squared up. Next we're going to flip the bars over, and now we're checking the sweep. And to do that we're going to measure from the table up to where the handlebar meets the ruler. And in this case we're checking to make sure that one side of the handlebars is not bent further forward or back compared to the other. After measuring the one side and taking a note of what that is, we're going to repeat the process on the opposite end. And once again, the hope here is that both measurements are the same. And if your rise and sweep measurements all correlate, your bars are straight and you are good to go. So now we know this 91 Kneesavers are good, and I'll be using them on the final assembly. I also plan to do a number of other era-correct upgrades to this build. So here's a rundown of what I'm swapping out and why. This bike came with a set of ODR long neck grips. This particular set of grips is a modern version and is not era correct. I've been lucky enough to track down both versions of the Haro Kryton Grip, the race version and the freestyle version. Obviously with this being a Haro Sport, I'm going to be going with the Freestyle version on this build. Another part that I'm upgrading are the brakes. The original brakes on this were ACS 860s. ACS was a really innovative brand, and one of their flagship products was the ACS Boa. It was a ball bearing caliper brake that outperformed everything else in the market and was one of my favorite products. It also turns out that the ACS Boa was spec'd on the 1991 Haro Airmaster, and because of this I think it'll be a great era correct upgrade. Another upgrade influenced by the Haro Airmaster is the seat. I'm going to be swapping out the standard Haro Freestyle seat for the Fusion Kashimax RS. It's one of my favorite seats, I've used it on a bunch of builds, and because of its links to Haro and Fusion, I'm going to be doing the same upgrade on this bike as well. Finally, the wheels. As mentioned in episode 2, these wheels are actually in really good shape. They are dirty, they need a good clean, and they also need a service, but there isn't a whole lot to do here to get them into really nice condition. The tyres, however, I am not a fan of. To me, Odyssey bare feet tyres are just a novelty tyre and I can't take them seriously. Because of this, I'm going to be swapping those out with the original Haro Freestyle tyres from 1991.
Now that I've gathered all the parts I need to complete this project, it's time to get stuck into the restoration. With it being a survivor, authenticity is super important. That means we're going to get this bike running as good as it ever has been, if not better than it ever has been, while retaining as much of the original finish, decals and parts as we possibly can. Let's get into it.
One of the worst jobs to do when working on an old BMX has to be removing the freewheel, especially if it's one that's been stuck on there for years. That is, until you try this method. Instead of struggling with a wrench to crank off the freewheel while holding the wheel still, simply put the freewheel tool in a vise and use the wheel itself to twist off the freewheel. It's super easy to do, works first time every time, and if you've been struggling with freewheels and trying to use wrenches to get them off, this method is an absolute game changer. One part of the process that's really important for me is thoroughly cleaning all of the parts. I'm always amazed how many people go straight to polishing or straight to refinishing without actually cleaning the parts to see what the true condition is. I use a non-caustic automotive soap mixed 5:1 and a series of soft brushes to clean every inch of the parts. It's pretty messy and takes a bit of time, but you won't believe how good the parts look after you remove 30 years of dust and dirt. Not only do the wheels look good, but we also managed to save the original decals that were dirty and peeling. Those little details really matter for me, and if a bit of soap and water can do that, it's definitely worth doing. The final step on the wheels was swapping out the generic axle nuts on the rear hub for a set with floating washers. This is the style of axle nut that would have originally come on the hubs and means that the rear wheel now matches the front. I'm really happy with how these wheels turned out. We've managed to preserve all of their originality and their history, but they now run as smoothly as the day they left the factory.
Something we all have to deal with when restoring these bikes is rust. This project is no exception, and almost all of the chrome is covered in a fine surface rust. How you deal with it probably warrants an episode of its own, and at some point I might do that. But for now, here's a quick overview of how I approach it and what I think the best method to treat it is.
The internet is full of products and suggestions on how to remove rust, and in my opinion, 99% of them are snake oil. Of course, the best solution will depend on the condition of your parts, but in my experience, oxalic acid is by far the best product for removing rust from bike parts. A lot of the chrome parts on this build are covered in a fine surface rust, and it's important we remove this, as if it's left to develop, eventually the chrome will begin to flake. You can see the pitting right across the chrome surface and is most evident in areas like the knurling and under the crossbar. Oxalic acid is a great way to get rid of the surface rust, and while it can't repair the chrome itself, it will completely remove any surface rust that's there. The first step is to get a container that's large enough to fit your parts and fill it with warm water. Warm water is not essential, but like all chemical reactions, it helps speed things up. Next, I mix a concentrated solution of oxalic acid crystals with water in a jar. You can put the crystals straight into your container, but I find doing it this way helps everything dissolve a lot quicker. Place all of the parts that you wish to treat in the tub, and if necessary, top it up with a bit more warm water until everything is completely covered. From here on out, it's just a waiting game while the oxalic acid does its thing. This part of the process can take anything from 4 to 48 hours, depending on the condition of your parts. I find it helps to check in every couple of hours and agitate the solution. If you see any white or yellow residue building up on the parts, it helps to brush this off. This ensures that the rust is always fully exposed to the solution. Once you're satisfied that the solution has removed the rust, you can take your parts out the tub. At this point, it's really important you neutralize the solution using baking soda. While oxalic acid is a mild acid, it is acid nonetheless, so neutralizing it before you dispose of it is critical. Now that your parts are out the solution, give them a thorough clean with soap and water and then dry them properly. After soaking in the oxalic acid, all of the surface rust has now gone, even from the stubborn areas like under the crossbar. As mentioned before, while oxalic acid is amazing at removing rust, what it cannot do is repair chrome. Any pitting or flaking of the chrome that was already there unfortunately cannot be reversed. However, by using oxalic acid, you can stop any future deterioration and also significantly improve the condition of the existing chrome. If you want to take it a step further, you can now use a metal polish or something similar to shine up the chrome. However, as this is a survivor build, I'm going to leave all the chrome parts as they are. With the rust removal process complete and upgrade parts sourced, the remainder of the restoration will take place as part of the rebuild. In episode 4, I'm going to introduce you to the last few parts that I'm adding to the bike. We'll of course be completing the rebuild and revealing the finished product. I'm also going to introduce you to the next project that's coming to the mid-school sessions. If you've been with us since episode 1, thanks for following along. I really appreciate all the comments and feedback I've received so far. If you're enjoying these videos, please make sure you like and subscribe. Doing so ensures that YouTube shares these videos with other like-minded individuals who are also passionate about mid-school BMX. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.